Recording. Good morning, everybody. Welcome. And if you were here yesterday, welcome back. Today, we're going to be talking about Google Classroom this first hour, and then Rich will be talking more about Google Sites the second hour. And I think they're a really good pairing to talk about together on the same day, because I know I have gotten a lot of questions about the difference between the two and why you might use one and not the other, or how you could use both. So I definitely am going to be touching on that today. I have my own personal opinion about the use of both slides and a site. Classroom and a site separately, even though it's a little bit more to manage. And I'll explain to you kind of my thinking behind that. And I'm happy to continue that conversation with anyone that's trying to figure out, what they want to do for their own classroom. So I'm going to go ahead and start to share my screen. And I wanted to just start out by pointing out to you, if you were here yesterday, this is going to be a little bit of a repeat, but if you weren't here yesterday, I wanted to let you know that we have a new EdTech resources website, and I put that link in Rich, you're looking weird at the screen. Does everything look okay? Thumbs up if everything looks okay. I can't hear you, but I'm going to assume that everything's okay. I'm reading your facial expressions. This is our EdTech resources website, and it's a site you will definitely want to bookmark and use frequently. There's a lot of stuff on here, and I'm not going to go through it too much, because I'm going to actually create a video tour of the website that goes into more detail about what's here, and we'll share that out through email. But I did want you to know that this site is here for you, and there's tons of resources on here. It's a work in progress. There's one thing I really wanted to point out today, and it's really a kind of a management thing. Sorry, I'm going to go back and introduce myself. I'm Jen Gritman, and I've been a 4 or 5 teacher at Cornell, and before that a 6th grade teacher at the middle school. And this year I have the exciting opportunity of being an EdTech TSA, teacher on special assignment, so coaching and gathering resources and helping with this giant leap we're about to take into a year, hopefully not a full year, but at least the beginning of a year of distance learning. So I am primarily Rich and I are kind of the EdTech TSA team. My focus is going to be primarily on primary, and his will be on secondary. So if you're a primary teacher, you can direct your questions and requests to me. If you're a secondary teacher, you can go to Rich, and we'll be relying on each other as well, and tag teaming as much as we can. But those are kind of your point people, depending on what level you're teaching. I did want to point out to you something that, I'd love to have people start using. We don't have a help desk tech ticket system the same way that through email, the same way that the IT department does, but we have set up a Google form. So as much as possible, if you could get used to using this reach out button on our website to send your questions to us, it really helps us manage your questions, because there's a place for you to designate whether you're a primary or a secondary teacher, and that will funnel your questions to Rich and I kind of, from the start a little bit more appropriately. Of course, you can always email us, but it's a little harder to manage, so many emails coming through, as you know yourselves. And so the more we can start to channel questions through that reach out button, I think it'll help us do our work more efficiently. So just wanted to point that out. There's lots and lots of stuff on here. What I wanted to point out to you today is there's a page for each Google Suite app. And so today's, we're focusing on Classroom, which is this one right here. So there's a whole page on Google Classroom. It's got a video tutorial from Google. It's got a resource page, some tips and ideas for you that we've just bullet pointed. And then this is the slideshow from today. And by the end of the day today, this video presentation will be populated here on this website as well. This is the video from last spring's Google Classroom presentation, which I'll probably remove once we update with today's But this is a great place to go if you're looking for more information on Google Classroom. So I'm going to go back over to my presentation and just get started. And I want to minimize my little window. And I'm just going to, Rich, if any issues come up, if you could just shoot me a text, and I'll try to keep an eye on that as I go. So again, you can follow along here, or if you want to access this later, this is a link to our presentation. It's on the website, but there's no need to open a new tab or go anywhere else. You can just follow along here. So everyone is muted, you already know, and but please do ask questions in the chat. And if you have a question and it's something that someone else that is watching can answer, please feel free and jump in and help each other out. Rich might also jump in and help you out. And if it's a larger question that we think maybe other people might benefit from discussing, then he'll be kind of moderating that, and we'll do a little Q&A at the end. The focus today really is on setting up a new Google Classroom. So for those of you that have already used Classroom, I'm not sure there's going to be a whole lot of new content for you. I know that the high school, I believe, is all going to Google Classroom. So I think there's quite a few teachers that are probably going to start using it for the first time. And I know third through fifth grade at the elementary are leaning toward also using Google Classroom. So if you're a K1 or 2 teacher, this is probably not the best use of your hour. And if you're already like well on your way and have used Classroom in the past, the pace and content of this presentation might not be great for you either, but we're definitely happy to answer more advanced questions as we go. And then also, if you want to use this time, to browse around that district website, that would be a great thing to do on the side, or even start getting some parts of your classroom set up. You could use this time to do that as well. So there's a couple of other things I wanted to point out before I jump in. This slide has, if you go to this slideshow later, has links for you. This is a button, and you'll see it on our website. It's down here on our website, and if you have time later to go in and keep populating this Tech Connect, we're really trying to rely as much as possible this year on collaboration and helping each other out. So if you are an expert on any of these tools that are shared on our website, you can click on this green button right here later on, or even now if you're wanting to do that now. And you can put your name under any of these topics and put your site in parentheses, so that, let's say I'm a Marin teacher and I really want to find a colleague who knows more about docs. I can look at this list and look for somebody, and then hopefully get a question answered. It's another avenue of support. So just wanted to point that out to you. This is a link to the website we were just on. This is a link to that reach out button I already talked about. And elementary teachers, we do have, oops, sorry. I have a wireless mouse that's doing weird things. This is an elementary Slack channel that was started last spring, pretty much right away in March. It wasn't super active last year, but I'm hoping to help facilitate making that a more active discussion place for us as well, and a place for sharing. So check that out. There's different channels for each grade level and specialty area and things like that. So that's all your help places. Before we dive into Classroom itself, I did just want to address this question of the difference between a Google Classroom and a Google Site. A Google Site is a website, just like the one I showed you here. It's an interactive place that can, house all kinds of different things, like you can see from this, links and libraries and calendars and videos and all kinds of things. And a Google Classroom is really the place where you hand out assignments, is the way I think of it. I know that a lot of people were probably using Google Classroom to post announcements and videos and little welcome messages and things like that for their students. And that's totally, you know, very much a function of what it can do. My concern with that is kind of two things. First of all, I think that Classroom is a little bit of a sterile environment. There's not a lot of room for making it feel more homey and welcoming and kind of cozy. It's very much like a feed of posts that so that's leads to my second concern, is that things can get lost in that stream very easily. And so if you're doing a welcome message in the morning and then a bunch of assignments are posted, those are going to be on top of that. Then, you know, somebody gets on Google Classroom later on in the day and your welcome message is now harder for them to find, not the first thing they see. So personally, I feel like having a site, like the difference I think about it personally is that a Google site is really my physical, when we're in this situation of teaching not in a physical classroom. My website is like my actual physical classroom. It's a place where I can insert posters or have sub pages, you know, that have students' birthdays, or post a fun video of the day, or those kinds of things. Whereas Google Classroom for me becomes the place, really, it's like handing out work. It's where I hand out assignments and it's where I hand out work. So personally, the way I handled this in the spring, and just something to think about, is my students knew to log on to their Google site, the website, every morning at 8:30. It had a morning message, it had some photos, you know, it had different things. And it did have a daily schedule. You know, it was just a text box that listed what they were going to be working on for the day, so they could kind of wrap their brain around it. But anything then that was handed out that they had to turn in, the work that they were doing, was posted on Google Classroom so that they could turn in that work through Google Classroom. I found my site to be a really lovely place where I could also have a page of, you know, if you're bored, here's some things you can do, you know, resources on a page. I used it as a page for a virtual open house for my students, where I, you know, took photos of their work and posted, you know, galleries of photos, so that instead of having an in-person open house, we could kind of have a digital open house. So again, the site, I feel, is like an actual classroom. And the classroom, Google Classroom, to me, is just me, literally me handing out work. So I just wanted to put that out there. And I'm happy to kind of talk through that, you know, thinking around things. You know, if it's too much and you're like, I don't want a site and I just want a classroom, that's definitely totally fine. And I do just think that the more we're trying to think about, you know, the social emotional connection with our students, Classroom doesn't, in my point of view, doesn't allow for that quite as much as a website can. And a website can be very simple and still be very welcoming. It doesn't have to be something you update, you know, a ton or add a ton to. And it's also great because it can grow throughout the year. And you might decide later, oh, I want to, you know, do this project and I'm going to create a new page on my site for that. So if you're interested in that, I definitely recommend checking out Rich's session later, next, and definitely shoot us questions if you want to talk a little more about the differences between the two. So accessing Classroom, Classroom is accessible through Clever. If you're using Clever, I didn't really use Clever all that much as a teacher personally. You can also get to it through your waffle, the 9 dots, and you can also just type classroom.google.com. All those different ways are going to get you into a Google Classroom. And when you go there, these are just really the very basic steps. You're going to, you know, find Google Classroom, which this is the logo, and you're going to click the plus button to create a class. and you want to give your class a name, you can give your section a name. A period number works really well, a subject. You want to kind of define your class there and then click create, and you'll have created your new classroom there. And this is just the step-by-step of what I just said. But if you're looking at this slideshow later, here are some people like icons, some people like words, so I put it in both ways. I'm going to give you kind of a quick tour. When you create a classroom, this is going to be your main page. And so there's some important places to go. And so knowing the difference between these tabs up here at the top is going to be really important. And then this box to me becomes very important as well once I have assignments and due dates entered. So I'm going to go through kind of these one by one. I'm going to jump over here to this classwork tab right here and talk about that first. So that's where we are now. When you go to that classwork tab, and you can see the blue line underneath, so you know that's the tab we're in now. This is where you're going to assign your work. And so you click this create button, and you can create assignments, you can post material, you can share a video that you want them to watch. Whatever it is that you want to do there, you can do under this tab. This is the really quick tour. I'm going to go backwards and talk a lot more about that. But the quick tour is that then you can also, under this people tab, right now, this is an empty classroom that just has me as the teacher and no students. So, but when you are the teacher, your name will be here. You can add a co-teacher. I think I'm getting a tiny bit ahead of myself, but you can add a co-teacher. So if you would like to share your classroom with a special ed teacher or an intervention teacher or a job share teacher, or whatever it is, you can have more than one teacher. Whoever creates, I totally think I'm getting ahead of myself, so I might be skipping a slide in the future if I am. But whoever creates the classroom whoever creates the classroom will invite the other teacher, and that teacher will get an email and just click accept and join that classroom. Your students will populate here, and we'll talk a little bit about how to invite your students. It's a little bit different for, primary students. Some don't have email and some do, and then at the high school, there's kind of different things. So we'll talk a little bit about the ways to invite your students that I've used. And then I think I just went through this. This is all the things I just said about adding a co-teacher. So there is a slide about that. Also down here, please note, you can only invite AUSD staff. I'm not sure why you'd want to invite somebody else, but you can't invite people outside of AUSD. Let's see, there are settings that you'll want to check out. There's a settings button in the upper right-hand corner of your classroom, a little gear, and there are default settings, but you're probably going to want to look through depending on what kind of notifications you want to get and what kind of stream you want to have. This is a big one right here for your stream, which we'll go back and talk about some more. I really, really, really recommend that you start the year off, especially if this is your first Google Classroom, that you choose that only teachers can post and comment. And maybe later on, after some guidance with your students, start to allow teachers to post or comment. Students, if you're going to allow students to post and comment, it is a great place for you to interact with your students and for them to ask questions. I would just do some really strong digital citizenship lessons around what does an appropriate post look like. I even have a rubric for my students that I talk about and grade them on their kind of virtual communication. So, and I shared, I think, that rubric on the digital citizenship page of our website, if you're interested in that, but I talk a lot about that. Otherwise, you're gonna get lots of emojis, you're gonna get lots of LOL, you're gonna get a lot of kind of texting talk in your stream. And I really emphasize with my students that on Google Classroom, it's kind of like you're raising your hand in class. So if you're commenting or asking a question of me, then I would expect it to look like what I would hear if you were raising your hand in class. And if you're commenting on another student's assignment or work, then I would expect it to be something you would say if you were responding to them in class. So I think it's really important to make that very explicit. Like I said, usually start out the year with it turned off and then work up to students being able to post and comment. So classwork on the stream, you can look at these. I haven't really done much with these notifications and settings here, but you can take a look at that. And then you can turn on sending guardian summaries, and you can set this up where you enter emails for your students so that you can share what's going on. And I haven't done that so much in the past when we've been at school, but I think I would definitely turn those on this year, especially primary teachers who don't have something like Aries to check. And I would want guardians to know what kind of work is getting posted, what kind of work is getting done.
Dan, are you okay?
I am also, and Rich, I'm hearing some voices. So if anyone's unmuted and you want to check on that, that would be great on your end if you can do that. You want to get students into your class, and there's going to be a class code to join. And I'm going to go back a few slides actually to our stream. And the class code to join is right here under the name of your class. So on your main page on your stream, there's a class code right here, and it's letters and numbers. If you click this box, it'll show it bigger on your screen. I think that, you could do this on a Zoom with students. You could email that code to students. I'm thinking through, I'm not quite sure how the high school is going to get, I think there's ways through Aries that we can send this information out to students. So but that's the code you're going to need to add students into your class. Oops. And there's a video there about getting students to join. So your students can go to Classroom through Clever, or the same way you did, by going to their little waffle. And when they click the plus box, they're going to choose join a class, not start a class, unless you're my kid who started a Google Classroom and invited all his friends to it. But other than that, you're going to want to, your students are going to join a class, and they're going to choose student, not teacher, and they're going to join a class using their code. So at that time, I'm going backwards, your people are going to populate then. And your students that have joined are all going to show up here. You're going to have a long list of students there once they click that code and join your class. So when you're posting on Google Classroom, there's lots of different types of posts. You can add something that you already have from your Drive, or a link or a file or a YouTube video. Or you can create directly within Google Classroom. So if you click create, you can make a doc, a slide, sheet, drawing form right there within Google Classroom. Typically, I create my assignment ahead, using my Drive, and then I attach it by adding it from my Drive. But these are the choices that you'll have on Google Classroom. You can make an assignment. An assignment is something that you're going to want them to turn in. There's a turn in button on assignments, or you're going to want to assign a quiz, and that will give you options for grading and things like that. You can ask a question. That's not something they turn in. It's just something they would respond to. You can post material. Again, this is not going to be something they're going to turn back into you, but let's say you wanted to share your class syllabus or guidelines for a project that you want them to read, but it's not the actual document itself. You could post it as material. You can also reuse posts from a previous class. So if you did things last year and you want to repost something, if you click that, it'll allow you to use something from a previous classroom. It's a time saver that you could use. So to share something on your stream, you're gonna start with that's not an assignment, you can start directly from your stream, and you can share with your students. Here's where I know some people were posting a daily schedule or writing a note or an announcement or saying, good morning, watch this funny video, that you could share directly from your stream. It's not an assignment that they're going to be turning in. It's just a post that you're making to them. And you can imagine, you know, social media people just making like a Facebook post or something like that. That's kind of what you're doing here. You can send that post to all of your students, or you'll notice here, and this is great, especially when you want to start interacting maybe more individually with students and give a resource or some sort of document to just one person. Like I watched Rich's Screencastify presentation yesterday, and let's say I make a Screencastify video with feedback about someone's essay, I can just choose that one student here and share that video with that student directly with them through Google Classroom, so that you're not, you know, relying so much on email. And you can kind of streamline where you are communicating. So that's a great thing. This was also great for me last year teaching a combo class. I could hand out assignments to just my 4th graders or just my 5th graders very easily through Google Classroom. So you can, you know, use the add button to share anything with your students here on your stream. When you want to create an assignment, though, you're going to want to go to that classwork tab that I showed you at the beginning, and you are going to click add an assignment, and you're going to give that assignment. I've kind of walked you through the steps here, 1 through 10, and numbered them with my shaky pen, but you're going to give your assignment a title, and you can post any instructions in here. You can write, you know, the directions or give them, you know, some sort of guidelines there. And then you can attach your file or create your file right there. So let's say I've created a response page to a story we read, and I made a Google Doc that has, you know, space, a question, and then a box for the students to write their answer in. I would add that document that I created. And again, that's going to let you add it directly from your drive. And I'm going to attach it. There's going to be another important piece that we talk about in a minute about how to make sure everybody gets the type of copy that you want them to have. You can choose your audience over here. So like I said, if you have multiple classes, you can choose which classes are getting this assignment here. And if you want particular students, you can choose that there. You can give it a point value, and we can talk a lot more about grading. You can upload, and I have to be honest, since I'm a primary teacher, I believe that you can upload, you know, integrate Aries and Google Classroom so that your grades from Google Classroom kind of transfer to Aries, but I have to be totally honest, I don't know how, and I've never done it. And I ended up in the spring just giving every assignment a 10-point participation grade, just so that I could kind of keep track of who was engaged and with me and who was not. And so I could, you know, quickly look at a student and see that they had tons of zeros because they weren't doing assignments. And then I could contact that family and say, hey, what's up? What's the roadblock? You know, what can we do to, you know, help the situation? So, you know, but there is a point value here thing, or you can call it ungraded. You don't have to grade an assignment. You can set a due date. And I definitely recommend using this due date button because it's going to help you manage your assignments a lot better if you have due dates for it. They'll populate to a calendar for your students, and you can really easily keep track of what is done and late and on time and all of that. And then this number 8, again, is one of my super, super, super top tips for having a Google Classroom, and that's to assign topics to your assignments. Because then on your classwork tab, they're going to be organized by chunks, and I can show you that in a little bit. But if you don't give them topics, then they are going to all be kind of unwieldy. And again, anybody that was at my drive, and Doc's presentation yesterday, you know I like to keep things obsessively organized digitally, totally not at my house, but digitally. So giving things topics is really going to help you manage that. And then you can attach a rubric if you have a rubric for the kids to look at. And then the last thing you can do is assign it right now. Or if you click this little button to the right of the assign button, then it will allow you to schedule it to assign later. So if you're working over the weekend, but you don't want this to roll out until Monday morning, you know, not that I'm advocating working on the weekend. Let me change that. Let's say you have some free time on a Thursday, but this is an assignment that you're getting ready for the following Monday. You can schedule that to roll out later on, and that's a great tool as well. And then it'll just automatically post at the time that you have assigned it for. So that's kind of the gist of getting an assignment up and going. Another really important thing to think about before you click that assign button or before you schedule an assignment to send at a later time is looking at this box to the right of whatever you attached. So here's my journal entry that I attached from Google Docs. I asked them to write their journal entry for this week. Now I have 3 choices. Students can view the file. Basically what you're doing there is the same thing as just posting material. Kids are not going to have access to it. They can't get into it. All they can do is see it. So that's not usually what you want to do when you're sharing an assignment. It might in very specific cases. You might choose students can edit this file. The problem with this one is that you're sending the exact same file out to every single student. So they're all editing one document. So again, this might be something you want to do if you're sending a document to a small group and you're wanting those 5 students to collaborate on a journal entry together. And those 5 students you send it to can all edit that file. I would say that 98% of the time I'm using this setting at the bottom, which is to make a copy for each student. Literally what that is it's handing out the assignment to every single student. So now every student in my class has their own copy of this journal entry. When they open that assignment, it'll have this titled journal entry at the top, but it'll also have their name next to it. And now every single student has their own copy that they can edit. So it's a really important one to remember to check this. It happens all the time, you know, a couple times a year where I forget this and I get lots and lots of comments. I can't open it, or everybody's changing it at the same time. And so then I just delete this and reattach it and redo it. So. The work at a glance is really helpful, and I think I showed you that on that first slide. I said the box on your stream on the very left-hand side, it says upcoming. Things will only show up here if you've given them a due date, which is another reason why I think it's really good to attach due dates, assign due dates. So it'll show what's upcoming. And if you click on this View All button in your upcoming box, it will give you this view of all of this. And I think Ms. Cohn might be here. She was my 4th grader science teacher, so she was a co-teacher on my Google Classroom last year. But this will be an overview of all the work that's upcoming. These things at the top didn't have a due date, and these things did have due dates, and it would tell you just really quickly at a glance how many have been turned in. Oh, a new person turned in their colony brochure, and right from there I can click on that one and I can go to that person's brochure. So this page to me became very, very helpful as just an overview of who had finished what. Something that I think is really, really helpful, you guys know that I'm a Google Drive, freak, but there is, as soon as you create a class, automatically, you do not have to do anything. There's going to be a Google Classroom folder in your Google Drive. So it will look like, I'll just go to my drive, and it's going to look like this. and it'll show up automatically in my Drive. And then every time I post an assignment, the assignment is created as a new folder in your Drive, and it will, let's see, I'm just gonna open one. It will have all of the different students and their work are inside that folder. So it will do it for you. So you can go directly to that folder from your Google Classroom. You can link to it, or if you're in your Drive, you can find it by looking for it as well. And that's really helpful. Another thing to think about, and I think someone posted a question to us. Let's say I want my students to be able to read each other's work. I can go to that folder and I can share that folder, get a shareable link, and I can turn file sharing on for that folder and then share that link with my students. So then that's one way that you can have them be able to see each other's work really easily. So yeah, sharing individual folders within your Google Classroom larger folder will allow you to change permissions and let kids see each other's work. So you might even assign, today, go to this folder and read three of your classmates' book reports, and they could pick and choose from the people in that folder. I did want to say that in the spring we had the IT department create some dummy accounts, and so probably not the right use of the word, but anyway, so they are here for you to use. This is great for all kinds of apps that you might use, not just Google Apps, but if you're going into Flipgrid or to Seesaw or whatever it is you're learning and using, and you want to see what does it look like from the student end. It can be frustrating sometimes to be teaching in Google Classroom and not know, what does this look like for my students? What are they seeing? And so you can either this summer, while you're kind of playing around, you could make a practice class and you could put all 5 of these students in your practice class. Or you could add one of these students to your 2021 classroom so that you can always click log in as that student on Google Classroom and see the classroom from a student side. So these live also on the teacher toolkit page at the top on our website. We've put them here, seeing all of these tools from the student side, but I also pasted them here for you so you could do that. That is, let's see, this has a ton of other resources for you. How to create a class, how to add a co-teacher, how to adjust your settings. These are videos that you can go to. And if you have a particular issue, the Classroom Help Center from Google is really, really helpful. And they have a lot of resources there as well. And a tip that Rich gave at his presentation yesterday that I think is a great one is that Google is great at answering questions about Google. So if I were to wonder, how do I assign to every student in Google Classroom, if I were to just type that in as a search, how do I assign to every student in Google Classroom? Right at the top, I'll probably get a video, and I will get, you can see answers to that question. So I definitely recommend Googling your questions. And it's kind of like the 3 before me that some of us use in the classroom. I would definitely ask that there's so much out there. And if your instinct is just to send the question our way immediately, I would encourage you to Google it first. And if you can't find it, then definitely send the question our way. So I think that's all I have there. Oh, more advanced features If you are a pro user and you're wanting to know more about grading and rubrics, communicating with guardians, integrating Google Meet. I know we're mostly going to be using Zoom this year, but there is a Google Meet integration within Google Classroom, reusing an assignment, all the calendar features. The Help Center has videos on all those things as well. So I recommend heading there. Okay, I think I'm gonna stop there. And we might even finish a little early today, which would be awesome. But Rich, any questions that you saw that you want me to address?
We have a bunch of questions. Some
Okay.
were answered in the chat, but I don't know that everybody's reading the chat, so I think it's good that we cover them all. And some of them are related to sites, so we can kind of address them here and kind of address them later too. Well, I will say one advantage of sites over Google Classroom is that parents can't go into the Google Classroom. And so they can't see the assignments and help their kids with it. So that's one advantage of sites. And again, there's another sites PD coming after this, and we can talk about more about that. And there's a question about public accessing files on your site. So we can talk about that later. Somebody asked about Clever and what it is and defining that.
Mm-hmm.
You want to chime in first, and I have something to say after that.
Sure. I'm Clever for, and again, I'm speaking from the primary elementary perspective. Clever is kind of a hub that students go to. Our Chromebooks at the elementary sites are automatically set to go to Clever when the kids open the Chromebook. It's almost like a home page for the students where the most used apps are there within Clever. So our students at elementary have, Google Classroom and maybe Typing Club and Dreambox for math, or the IT department and we as teachers can add little icons for students in Clever to their Clever account. And so it's one place that's really easy for students to go. So I'm imagining that K through 2 teachers would probably want to have Seesaw on Clever, and you can also post your website on Clever for your students. So last year when I developed my Google website, I dropped it into my Clever, and so my students that are assigned to me would have a little link to my class website from within their Clever kind of hub. So I hope that answers it. It might be more of an elementary focus thing. I don't know if it applies anywhere else.
Let me jump in real quick because I have never had any experience with Clever before. Then I got an email from the district saying that, oh, they've created my Clever account for me, and I logged in. And it might actually be, if you're not, Google Classroom, Jen talked about it disseminating work. If you're like, I don't want to build a website, Clever might be a alternative to it. I'm going to share my screen real quick just to show you the portal. And I have limited experience, but just so you can see what it looks like. As you log in as a teacher to Clever, this is the homeroom, and I guess the district has pre-populated some apps down here. I think these are the ones that are default that they've added: Aries, GoNoodle, Kids A to Z. But you can add different apps or pages on here. So if I click apps here, it takes me to a whole bunch of different things. And so I can, let's say, click on math, and it'll show me all these different apps that I can add to it that you may or may not be using already. And so this could be a way that you can disseminate these apps and pages to your students. For example, I clicked on Khan Academy here, and as I clicked install, it's populating it with my students from last year already. So there is integration. What it would do ultimately is put a Khan Academy icon on their Clever homepage when they open it up.
That's right.
And so I'm guessing this has probably been underutilized, because I think even at the higher levels, if you can just poke around here a little bit and figure out which things are applicable to you, you could devise this as a way for kids to check in and go to the apps that you want them to go to.
Rich, do you mind if I share? And I think the elementary one looks a little different. So
Well, I hadn't gone into my page. I was like from the dashboard, so it wasn't a specific room I went into. That was like but it might be
Yeah.
different.
If I go to Clever and I log in, the elementary one, I'm going to log in as a teacher. I have to find my school. Yeah, it'll have my students probably from last year. But it'll have the same, here's my homeroom. And so it looks a little different for elementary, but it has my virtual.
I just hadn't created any rooms yet.
Yeah.
Sorry, page.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, it's very similar, but and again, I think underutilized during distance learning for sure. But I think it's a great thing for all teachers, but I'm thinking in particular with younger students, if kids can learn how to just get to Clever, even a first grader, a kindergartner knows that Clever is bookmarked, and then they have access to so many things from there. They don't need adult support to get around. They can navigate a lot of things on their own just from knowing that they go to Clever to start. It's kind of a one-stop shop.
Okay. Next question. How do you archive/delete classes?
So you archive a class. If you go to classroom.google.com, it'll show you any classes that you have, and there's 3 dots.
You want to show the screen?
Yeah. So if I went to my classroom from last year, and it's hard for me to do since so over here I have, all my, let's see, I can go to all my different classes here. And then, how do I archive it? You guys, I can't remember. I thought there was 3 dots right here where I could then choose archive. So maybe someone can pop it in the chat if they've done it recently or remember how to do it. But in the past, there were 3 little dots right here next to a class. And then I was able to archive it from there.
Yeah, I can share my screen. I've got it up.
Okay. Yeah. They're changing features all the time, so.
So here, my classes are live here. And so if I click on here.
There it is.
I'll be given the option to archive. And I do, there's nothing lost by archiving. Rather, I don't even think there's a delete button.
Mm-mm.
And so you've got to archive it. You don't have a choice, but it preserves all those assignments and posts so you can copy. So you don't have to redo anything. If any assignments that you used in previous years, previous classes, you can pull them up and duplicate them.
What it will do though is it'll clean things up a bit for your students, because if you haven't archived it, when a student goes to their main page of Classroom, if they're looking at all the classes they're a member of, if you haven't archived yours, it'll still show up that they're a student in your class. And I'm thinking especially of high school students who now are going to have multiple Google Classrooms that they're navigating between. Archiving last year's classes will help them, because then your class from last year won't show up in their kind of library of classes.
Okay, next question. Can I link directly to a Google Classroom assignment from my website? You
can, yes. When you go to an assignment on Google Classroom, there's a little choice to get a link. You can click on the little 3 buttons next to the assignment in your stream, and you can get a link and copy that link and then link to it on your website. The one downfall, and again, I haven't seen if they've done any updates to this, but the one downfall is that that link doesn't show up until the assignment actually posts. So if you're getting your website ready for the next day and with your list of assignments, and you have scheduled an assignment to post tomorrow, you can't get that link until the assignment actually posts. So that was kind of one little, it wasn't ideal for me last year, because I was doing a lot of pre-posting, and I couldn't get that link until it went live.
Okay. Next question, what are Guardian summaries? And if I could chime in on that, I believe it's a summary of their work, not of the announcements.
Mm.
And so it'll tell the parent what they're missing, maybe even tell scores. Jen mentioned earlier, we created sample student accounts. And anytime you want to see student, let's say you want to see the Guardian summary from the parent side or see what the parent can see, you could create a student account, add them to your classroom, and then sign up as their parent with an alternate email that you have. And that's one way, and then sign up to receive the Guardian summaries to see what it looks like. But I believe that's what it was. So, because I got a couple emails last year, like, oh, my kid's missing this. I'm like, how did they know? It wasn't on Aries yet, and they saw it in a Google Classroom. Anything to chime in on that?
No, I do. I think it's an overview. It's definitely an overview. It's not going to be every single post and every single, like, all your instructions and everything. It's going to be kind of similar to that view page that I showed you of my summary. It's kind of going to look like that, but just for your one particular student. Each assignment, whether it was turned in, what score they got. Yeah.
Okay. Next question, for younger kids, do you go through AUSD email or the parent email? I'm not exactly sure about signing up, but go ahead.
Yeah, so our elementary students don't use email, so I share that code with younger students. I never use email at all. I don't use parent email. I have the kids log in using that little code that shows up. So if we were in a classroom, right, I would have all the kids with their Chromebooks. I'd have them get to Google Classroom and walk them through the steps of clicking the plus button and adding as a student. And then they'll be prompted to put in that little code. It was like a combination of letters and numbers. And I would project that code up on the screen so that it was nice and big and everyone could see the code. And then I'd know really quickly, I could watch that, classroom populate with all the students. It gives you a number even, so you can see, ooh, great, all 28 kids of my kids are in. And then help anyone that needed it. When I'm doing that virtually, again, I think that there's a lot still unplanned and decided yet about rolling information out, especially for students in middle and high school that have lots of teachers and lots of Zoom links and lots of classrooms and all that kind of stuff. It's a little bit easier with elementary. If you're an elementary teacher, I'm going to be creating a template that you can use to email families the week before school or whenever you choose to, that has a space on there for your Google Classroom code or your Seesaw code, for your website address, for your Zoom link for your first day, what time is your first Zoom going to be. So if you're an elementary teacher and you want to use that template as a way to communicate all that information to families in one place, stay tuned, because I'm getting that ready to share with you. And then I don't know, I think Rich and principals are talking a little bit more about how that rolls out for secondary, because it's a lot of information to share with students.
Okay. I want to follow up on that a little bit. Another way you can sign kids up for your Google Classroom is that if you click on the little waffle icon, as Jen calls it, in the corner, one of those icons is Google Groups. And what IT has done is they've set up a Google group for each of your classes. So, for example, if you're a single subject teacher, you've got 5 different classes, they've set up 5 different groups for your different periods. You can just go to the people page and then invite that entire group, and it'll automatically insert those kids into your Google Classroom without having to depend on them entering it yourself. So you can force kids into your classroom by inviting their group, and that's another option, and that'll work for elementary and secondary. So next question, can you create threaded messages on Google Classroom for students to post and respond to each other?
Yes, you can. Yes.
And you would do that on
threaded. I don't know. Meaning, could they respond? Yeah. I actually don't know the answer to that.
Quick, if you allow for comments, they could respond to that you could post a question on your stream as an announcement, and then they could respond to that if you're allowing for that.
Right, but threaded questions means that I could particularly respond to one student or another, and it would create separate kind of conversations. I'm thinking of like on Slack or something like that. And I don't actually know. I haven't seen that actually. It's usually, from what I remember, one long kind of list of comments, you know, where people would have to say, you know, hey, Adam, I agree with you or whatever, but it would not be in a thread to Adam. It would be in the post for everybody.
Okay.
But Margaret just gave us a great tip in the chat saying that she's used the stream for that, and students can type next to that student's work. So, so that's something to think about if that applies to you.
And there are a couple comments about the Google Groups adding to Google Classroom. What I might do is I might make a screencast on how to do that, so that people can watch that and follow directions on that. Okay, next question. When you're talking about posting a video to Google Classroom, what are you using to make the video? YouTube, something else, Screencastify?
Well, you could use any of those. So depending on what, you know, really it could be any video you want. So if I want to share a YouTube video, I used videos a lot in my class, whether it was content related or just fun videos. I could certainly post just a video I found that I want them to watch, or if I create my own video on Screencastify, then I could post the link to that, or, you know, upload that Screencastify file. Or if I've added all my Screencastifys to a YouTube channel, I'd love to do a whole PD on YouTube, because I think there's so many great things and uses for YouTube, like creating playlists, and, you know, it's a great resource as well. But that's for another day. But if you create a YouTube channel and have all your Screencastifys on a YouTube channel, you could link to that as well.
There's one that's a few more down here, but I don't want to write this down because, but I'm gonna read it to you. Is there a fast way to invite guardians, or do you need to type each email in?
As far as I know, the last time I did that, I had to type all the emails in, and I don't know if there's anything that's changed around that. Or if there's anything IT department integrated where they could help us do that. I don't know, but as far as I know, I've had to type all the email guardians in.
Okay. Where's the option or drop-down menu to determine if students can edit the same document? So maybe you can share your screen again. I guess the differentiating between a shared document that they all edit versus they each get their own copy. Where is that menu?
Yeah, so so let's see, where was that? Well, why don't I just go ahead and I'll create a new assignment for these students that I don't have anymore. So if I am going to create an assignment, and I went to my classwork tab and I went to create, and I'm titling it Google Classroom Basics, and I want them to watch this this video or this presentation that I've just given. And I can type some instructions in. I can add from my Google Drive. Sorry again. So I can add my presentation in that I want them to watch. And then here, right next to it in the same box over here, is either the students can all see this same file. Students can edit this file, which means I'm letting them change mine, or make a copy for each student. If I want them to modify this slideshow of their own and then turn it in, I would choose make a copy for each student. So if I had chosen a doc, or let's say I want to create a doc, and I can do it right from here. And I'm creating this doc that says, what did you learn today? And I want them to turn this in. Then it's creating that document, And I want them each to I want to make a copy for each student. Now they're all going to get their own version of what did you learn today, and they can do that and then turn it into me. So I hope that answers the question.
Somebody made a suggestion about regarding inviting the guardians, about using Aries to create a spreadsheet with all the parent emails and just cutting and pasting. Yeah, you still have to do that one by one. You can't dump all the emails in because each parent is associated with one student. So you have to click the guardian for that student and enter that email. But that would just be a series of Control C's and Control V's 30 times. So I bet you could probably whip that out in 5-10 minutes if you wanted to do it for a class. How did you get to the due pages summary? So I think with all the due dates for all the different assignments, could you show that?
Sure. So I'm going to actually do that because I don't have any due dates right now in my Google Classroom. So I'm going to go back to here in the presentation. When you're on your main stream, this upcoming box will have, kind of the next few assignments that are due, and I clicked on View All. And when I clicked on View All, it brings me to something that looks like this. So it's from that upcoming box that takes you to this view.
So I think what you're saying also is that without any upcoming assignments, you will not be able to preview that.
Right.
So all past assignments, you're not going to have that screen available to you for now.
Yeah, and I was reading an article, actually I think it was a Twitter post, somebody asked if you were talking to teachers and to give them one tip on Google Classroom, like your one tip, what would it be? And the things that came up most were give due dates and add topics. So, I did want to show the topics if you don't mind really quickly. Because I did topics, when I go to my classwork page, you're going to see that I labeled things social studies, reading, writing, miscellaneous, math. And then Ms. Cohen was my 4th grade science and Ms. Wong was my 5th grade science. So they had sections as well. So then things within those categories are going to be the most recent will be on the top. And you can move these around. You can move social studies higher or lower, so you can rearrange what order they go in. And then I had a few things, I'm going to delete that, but there were a few things that I just wanted them to have right at the top of their feed in their classwork. So I didn't put a topic so that they would show up right at the top. So there was kind of like a little just check-in form that they could use. They all wanted to tell me what videos to use for our daily videos. So there were recommendation form. So anything you don't want to kind of get sucked in down here, you can leave untopicked, and then it'll be up at the top.
Okay, I'm looking for something because somebody asked, I mentioned that I was going to make a screencast for adding the Google Group, so somebody wanted to see that real quick. So I'm going to go ahead and share the screen, so if you're ambitious and want to do it before I make the screencast, you can. So this is to add, using Google Groups to add your class to the Google Classroom rather than having to either individually enter their email or to have them use the code. So upper right-hand corner, I'm going to click the waffle icon, go down to, I missed it already, groups. This will be all the groups that I'm associated with in AUSD. Let's say you form a gardening club, you could make a group, or you have a committee of teachers. And I would go find the one that is for this year. So for example, this one would be my advisory class from 2019. They're labeled in a funny way, so sometimes it may take some deciphering, especially if you have multiple classes. For elementary, it shouldn't be a big deal. But once you've found the group that, and you might be able to click on it to see their members. There's a way to click on it to see the members, but as far as adding them to the group, you would just paste this. So let's say this is the class I want. I would highlight it. Whoa, sorry, I am having maneuverability problems. I would copy it, go to my Google Classroom, go to the people there. I would go to invite students, and I would paste in that group. And I just paste in the front half of it, but in actuality, it has add AUSDK12.org. And so it immediately recognizes the rest of the name. So I'm gonna click that and click invite, and it will put all the people in my class for me. So once again, you start with the waffle, you go down to Google Groups, right here. You look through all your groups to identify the class for this year. I'm assuming that the suffix for your class will be 20. Find the appropriate one and cut and paste it, and then add it to the people and click invite, and it'll add them all. Okay. All right. Next question is, last year, sometimes the permissions for the folder were automatically set to so that students could see each other's completed work. How can we make sure that this is not how the settings are defaulted to?
I don't know. It might be in your classroom settings. I've never seen that before. The only thing I've seen in terms of sharing is that any co-teachers could see all the work, but I've never seen it where all the students can. So I would do a Google search of that and see what you can find, and I can look into it as well, but I've never seen that before.
Okay. Is it possible for assignments that have been graded on Google Classroom to automatically transfer to Aries? What I did last spring was I would enter. So the answer to that is it is. I have not personally done it. I know people who can do it, and unfortunately I can't test it now since I don't have a class in Aries and whatnot. But once we have access to that, I could make a screencast on it. But yes, one thing I would suggest is that make sure the Google Classroom you make is only associated with, if I'm talking about single subject people who have multiple classes, make sure your Google Classroom has only one of the classes, because then you could actually, once you've graded the assignment with Google Classroom, Aries will pull, if that group is connected to the Aries group, it will pull all the scores from Google Classroom and import them into the appropriate assignment for Aries. So that is a nifty feature that is available to you. Next question, can you modify assignments only before the due date?
Modify assignments before the due date. So if you've already assigned something to someone and you've given each kid a copy, then you can't modify the thing you sent out to them. They already have like kind of a hard copy that you've sent to them. So any changes you make to the original doc, you would have to give them a new copy. But you can make changes to the instructions. You can edit your assignment to change instructions, to give updates, to change the due date. You can edit any assignment you want to. You just can't edit the thing that you've already handed out to everyone. Except for a thing on Google Slides that I just learned about this morning that's kind of amazing, but that's a whole different topic.
I have another question on here, but before that, I want to address something that triggered earlier. Earlier when Jen was talking about how you can make an assignment, when you make an assignment, you can have a copy for each student or a corporate copy for everybody to share, or something that they just read. One time I was creating something on the stream, and I posted, let's say, so I wasn't in the classwork section, I was in the stream section, and I posted a doc, and I was like, where's the option to make a copy for each student? And that only works for classwork, not for stream posts. So if anything you post on stream, you don't have that functionality available to you. Next question, the assignments page can be very anxiety producing for students. How do you keep it from being overwhelming?
Sorry, can you repeat it one more time? I was responding to a private chat. Sorry.
The assignments page can be very anxiety producing for students. How do you keep it from being overwhelming?
Yeah, I really encourage students to use those same, I encourage students to rely a lot more on the classwork tab and the view all kind of what's coming up tab for themselves than on the stream itself. I think the stream can get very, very overwhelming for students. So if I have really, and again, you might want to play around with jumping in from the student end, log in as a student and see what they see so that you can really give them the best feedback and the best advice. But I think that really training them to use that classwork tab where things are categorized by subject and by date, or clicking on they can also click on, I'm gonna share my screen again. Let's see, they can click on, if you have the people tab here, I don't know if they have a people tab, but they should be able to see, if they click, they should be able to see their own version of the kind of view all kind of a thing. So, so that they can see what's not turned in and what is turned in and what due dates are. And I think that is a lot less overwhelming. And for me, that classwork tab is a lot less overwhelming.
Could you speak a little bit to, and when you create assignment on Google Classroom, that's a Google Doc or Google Slide, whatever it may be, Google creates a folder for you and it houses in your Google Drive and houses all the assignments, correct?
Yep.
And so everybody kind of should be aware of that, because you will not have created this folder with all these documents in there. All of a sudden you'll have Joe Schmo assignment for this, and you'll have a folder full of assignments. So it's important to kind of be aware of that and reorganize so it doesn't clutter, because the more assignments you create, the folders it's going to create.
Totally, but all those folders are within a Google Classroom folder. So they're all in one folder inside, embedded in a folder. It's not like every assignment is just going to start populating your drive. They're all going to be embedded within one Google Classroom folder. And to be very honest with you, there are a very few handful of times that I ever access my students' work through my drive. I'm accessing their work through Google Classroom. So I'm, clicking on things that have been turned in through Google Classroom. Personally, the only time I ever went into my drive to access their work was if I wanted to print something out, or if I wanted to change the settings on sharing so that they could see each other's work. Other than that, I interacted with their work directly through Google Classroom, not through my drive at all. So you could even kind of like, move that folder or block out that folder or turn that folder black color or whatever you want so that it's not bugging you. But you don't actually have to deal with that folder at all if you don't want to.
If you deleted that folder, those assignments would delete as well, won't they?
Well, I don't think so. I think they would still live within, I don't know.
Maybe one last question, since we are running low on time. We have 2 minutes left and we gotta get ready for our next one. The question is, how can I access Student View? And I want to go ahead and say that we can't. However, if we've created these sample student accounts, and so if you are creating a Google Classroom and just want to see what it looks like right now, get on our EdTech website and sign up for invite that sample student into your classroom. Now that sample student is going to have a username and a password. So basically and that username is their email as well. So you sign them up and then log out of your account or open on a separate browser and then log back into Google Classroom using that kid, and you will see what it looks like. And just maybe, Jen, you want to type in our EdTech website one more time before we depart that so people can see?
Yeah, and those student accounts are on the Teacher Toolkit page. So if you go to the Teacher Toolkit page, you'll see them. They're also in today's presentation. So if you had that bit.ly link from today that I shared up earlier in the chat, you can do that. Oh, and somebody's asking if you need to sign in for attendance, and no, you just need to submit a timesheet for any of the sessions that you're attending. We're not doing any formal attendance.
Yeah, I think we're good. We
Yeah, and you guys, again, there's a lot to talk about in terms of Google Classroom versus Google Sites and how they might enhance each other. So if you have it in you, I would definitely recommend, coming back in about 15 minutes and at least checking it out and thinking about a site as well.
And I will say to you, I'm not going to try. I try never to use the word easy, but the site is relatively straightforward to build. It's just kind of like putting building blocks together and readjusting it. You can tweak it, modify as much as you want. So very doable, very doable. So come back in 15 minutes if you're interested in that.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.